Alright, welcome. So I've been getting some requests to do a FENRIR build video for Season 4. Not much has changed between Season 3 to Season 4. I mean, that is if you played in Season 3. With that being said, this is more towards the newer players of Smite. If you're more of an experienced Smite player, you probably already know the great items to pick up on FENRIR. You have your own build and it works for you. Again, this is just for the newer players out there. And the build I'm going to go into is not like the final best must-go-to build for every single game mode. I feel like for FENRIR, he's very flexible in his build. He can go a wide variety of builds. He can go into tanky build or just full-out tank, bruiser build, all-out damage build. Or maybe you're a firm believer in the attack speed FENRIR build, which is a lot of fun to play with. The idea behind the attack speed of FENRIR is just to have your passive up all the time to give you those extra benefits for your abilities. But yeah, enough of that. Let's get into actually building for FENRIR. Starting with the starter items, of course. If you're in a game mode that kind of calls for a starter item or makes sense to pick it up, which is pretty much everything except Arena and Assault, then your best bet is the Bluestone Pennant. However, if you are in Conquest and you're jungling, or maybe not even just jungling, I've noticed in Season 4 that everybody's just been picking up Bumba's Mask. I see it on mids now, but the point is if you are jungling with FENRIR, be sure to pick up Bumba's Mask. It only costs 500 gold for Season 4, so with that being said, you can pair that up with your Bluestone Pennant, and you can go ahead and buy some potions for your start, and then once you go back, you can work on your boots, your warrior type boots, and then continue on with the rest of your build. Go back, sell the starter items for funding for your other items, and of course, you don't want to have those starter items for the entire game. You want to sell it for a better item. And that's pretty much it for starter items. Again, if you're not jungling, maybe you're like in, I don't know, Clash or Joust or whatever, and you just need not Bumba's Mask. If you just need a Bluestone Pennant, then you can just go into that, warrior boots, rest of the build. But enough of that. Let's just sell all this and go straight into boots and continue on with the rest of the build. Now, for the most part, I see people just going into Yoan's Wrath right after boots. It's a classic. It's a classic item. It's been great on him because it's all the stats he needs. Power, pen, cooldown reduction. The mana is just kind of there just to complement the cooldown reduction. It wouldn't be that great if you had like all this cooldown reduction, but you didn't have the the mana to kind of benefit from it. So I highly recommend still going to the Yoan's Wrath. You can pick it up right after boots. It's not too expensive, so it's kind of like an easy transition into it. And now after you go into Yoan's Wrath, this is where your build really varies from other people's builds. And, you can add in your personal flavor items in there. So if you are the type of person where you want to be a little bit tankier with your FENRIR, then here are some good protection items to go into. One of them is definitely Breastplate of Valor. I kind of said that weird. Breastplate of Valor. There we go. Breastplate of Valor gives you some good physical protection. So in the case of Conquest talk, if you want to go ahead and gank the enemy solo laner, and as long as they're a physical, mostly probably a warrior, you're going to have the additional protections to help you out there. And also kind of like as FENRIR, when you go into like ulti someone or use your brutalize or whatever, when you hard engage on somebody, you're going to be taking some damage, from a hunter, warrior, whatever the case may be. And that's the idea behind this physical protection. Of course, Breastplate of Valor also provides you with a lot of cooldown reduction, which is another big point. FENRIR is indeed a ability-based assassin. So between the Yoan's Wrath and the Breastplate of Valor, you have the cap of 40% cooldown reduction, allowing you to get off multiple ultis. As long as you keep being aggressive, your enemies are not going to have their beats up all the time. Purification, while I believe the cooldown does be, I think it gets reduced by like 30 or so seconds. Yeah. So the upgraded beads, it's 130 seconds. That's still nothing against your 54-second Ragnarok ulti. So you could be looking to make a lot of plays with that. Some other good protection items to buy in general, not just a specific item slot. You have some other protection items, like maybe if you're solo laning against a mage, maybe Genji's, that really rare occasion. Some other good ones can be like Shifter Shield. While the protections is not a lot, like just off the base level, however, if you do utilize a passive and you drop below 50% health, then you gain 20 extra protections for both physical and magical on top of the 20 you already have. So potentially 40 for both. And as long as you're above the 50% threshold, you have 20 plus physical power on top of the 40. So that's 60 physical power for only 2,400 gold. That's a lot. Again, with FENRIR, he is more of an ability-based assassin, so it's going to really bump up your abilities. Of course, it also helps your basic attacks as well. And then for another one, you could go into Void Shield. I kind of want them to lower the price of Void Shield. 2,700's a bit much, but this is definitely another option to go into if you want some physical protection. So enough about that. Let's go into, let's say if you were to go into a protection item, I'll probably just go into Breastplate of Valor. However, if you don't want to go into a protection item after Yoan's Wrath, here are some other good items you could go into. For one is definitely the Hot Heartseeker. So Season 4, it's looking a lot better. It's very, very cheap. While the base stats aren't the greatest, like 25 power, it's not a whole lot. 10 pen, that's actually pretty decent combined with your Yoan's Wrath, which also gives you 10 pen. So you have 20 pen for a very cheap cost, and it's in the early game where the flat pen works the best. Movement speed, it's always a great stat, but the passive is what you're looking here. So again, if you're newer to Smite or you don't know all these items, this Heartseeker, what we're looking at is the passive. So the passive is for every successful basic attack gives you 1 stack. At 5 stacks, your next ability deals bonus damage equal to 100% of your physical power to the first enemy god hit. So of course, the way this works, it works perfect with FENRIR's passive. His passive, well, when you look at this, it's, you know, successful basic attacks, and it's 5 of them. So once you have all 5 stacks, you can go ahead and do something like, you know, press your 2, so that way it gives you the additional 50% buff for the 70 physical power, of course, if it's at max level. So you have a lot of power, go ahead and pop 1. And as you can see there, that yellow number was the Heartseeker talking. So 500 flat from the 1, and a big fat 200 with a proc. So that's how Heartseeker works. And it's a really cheap item, so it's easy to build into, and you can keep it for the entire game. That passive proc on Heartseeker is just going to do more and more with, you know, as you continue on with your build and you go into more physical power. So you could do something like that if you want to. Hydra's, it got nerfed a little while back. I'm not sure if it's still the most viable option or if it's really that great for FENRIR. But if you're still looking for a cooldown reduction, it might be something to look into. But yeah, so let's just continue on from Heartseeker. So again, the main stat you're looking for FENRIR to do damage, if you just want to do damage, power, pen, cooldown reduction, and that's pretty much about it. So from here, you can work into some other items. If you want to, you can go into like a shifter shield. You can do something like that. Go into some of these, you can go into all of these pin items, honestly. So what you definitely want to have is Titan's Bane towards the end of your build. That 33% is going to do a lot of work for the mid to late game. It's going to shred through any tanky targets. You know, at this point, if anybody was building protection, they're going to have it by now. And also, pretty much all the gods, as they level up, they do gain more and more physical protection. So this is going to shred right through that. Also, Titan's Bane is great to just eat through objectives, towers, fire giant, whatever. So you can build into that now, and then you can go into another pin item if you want to, or you can hold out on Titan's Bane and just pick that as your very last item slot. So instead, you can go into something like Brawler's Beat Stick, pick up this item to counter healers, and it's also really great against life-stealing gods. Maybe, you know, something crazy like a Kali, and there's like hunters like crazy, and they're just life-stealing off of you. This can help shut that down. Another item that I don't feel like too many people have really looked at the Crusher, but it has been changed. It's completely overhauled from Season 3 to Season 4. Gives you power, which that's always been there. Now it gives you 15% attack speed. So, I mean, you can build up your passive a little bit quicker, and now gives you 15 pen. I think before it was 10, I like to say. But regardless, 15 pen, but this passive. So, hitting an enemy god with a basic attack will subtract 1 second from all your abilities currently on the cooldown. This effect can only occur once every 5 seconds. But that's the thing. This only works if you're hitting gods. It doesn't work off of minions. But in the rare case where, you know, you're fed, you can just go ahead and just walk up to people and start basic attack them. It can lower your cooldowns if you want to. I kind of see this item as it's a little bit better if you're like a hunter like a Neath, where you're a little bit more ability based and you can freely attack from a range and not have to worry about getting hit back all that much. Then you can go into something like this, but regardless, it might be something looking into. So again, you can go into some of these items. Back on the point on power, if you want a lot of power, there's some items I can give you, certainly that. For one, Bloodforge. It is pretty expensive, so I do recommend if you are going to build this towards the later stages of the game, you know, get your core items done first, and then you can go ahead and invest into this item. What we're looking at is the 75 big old power. The lifesteal, It's alright, you know, you can complement that with your 2, so that way if you need to and you have the freedom to, you can just press 2 and just kind of just lifesteal all the way back and then go in to engage again. This passive works really well if you're a really aggressive player and you want to keep just chaining kills together, and you get a kill, proc this blood shield, and then boom, you can continue on getting more kills or do whatever you want to. Or unless, you know, maybe like a tower diver or a phoenix diver, so if you get a kill under the enemy's tower, you don't have to worry about getting destroyed by the tower right away. You have a little comfort zone with the blood shield activated there. Some other high-powered items definitely could be Transcendent. It's kind of a weird one because Transcendent, while it is a stacking item, it can give you a huge boost of physical power without any stacks, as long as you have, you know, a couple mana items. Like I said, with the Yoan's Wrath, maybe you have Breastplate of Valor that gives you mana. But the main thing is, as long as you're level 20, you have a lot of mana. You know, every time you level up, your HP goes up and your mana goes up per level. So, I mean, you can see what I'm saying here. I have 165 physical power. Go ahead and pick this up. And you have 241. You do something like that if you really, really want to. But yeah, those are some items that give you a lot of power. These other swords here, 50, you know, from stone cutting, it could be an option. So you can maybe basic attack a few times on your enemy and then pop your 3, so that way you can kind of penetrate through all those protections. Maybe something crazy like that. Maybe Masamune. But yeah, so just going back, like you can go into maybe just like a Brawler's Beat Stick and a Titan's Bane, or it doesn't have to be a Brawler's, it can be a Crusher, Transcendence, or you can go back and pick up the Void Shield. So that way, not only do you have pin, you also have just flat physical protection removal, because you're going to be close to your enemies that you're attacking, because he is melee, obviously. And then Titan's Bane for that percent base. You can do something, you know, like that if you really want to. He's a very flexible character. Or maybe you find yourself needing some more protections for the late game, because like the Hunter is destroying you, or even the mages are giving you a hard time. You can go into something like the Mantle of Discord for the late game, as long as, you know, you have your Titan's Bane. So go into something like Mantle, of course, be careful. It's not the greatest idea to build this if you already have Yoan's and Breastplate, because then you'd be like way overcapping cooldown reduction, and you're not really fully benefiting from this item. So like in a case like this where you just have Yoan's and you have no other cooldown reduction items, you can pick up Mantle for the late game, so that way you're a little bit tankier. So when you go into ulti, you're not getting destroyed by, you know, Krakens or crits. You know how much we love crits. And you have the cooldown reduction, of course, the passive can help you out. And again, if you can't afford this, the cheaper version would just be the Spirit Robe. So you do something like this, so that we have a nice mix between, you know, power, pen, cooldown reduction. You have all the great stats that you want to. But yeah, so let's just go into an all-out damage build, something like this, something crazy. And we can kind of mess out with our damage. I can kind of show you what I'm talking about with the Heartseeker proc. So let's build up our passive here. Let's say maybe we have the 500 potion, and maybe you have something like Sunder, and we can upgrade Sunder. So let's do the 500 potion. Let's pop that. Or is it, I think is it 750? It's 500. It's 500. All right. So I'll pop the 500 potion, go into, like, you know, just Sunder him, press 2, press 1. That's quite a bit. You know, of course it is against a level 1 Odin bot, just keep that in mind, but you can kind of see the idea that, you know, that Heartseeker proc is very real, and that's without, you know, the red buff, without a 3k pot, and that's certainly without the Frenzy ritual. Don't forget to buy rituals in the very late game where you have your full build. These things can come in really handy, you know, with the combat blink or flickering ritual. And of course the Frenzy, what this does, increases yours and your allies' attack speed by 20%, but what we're looking at is as well as damage done to all targets by 25%. So you can go to a Frenzy, so 25% more damage. Upgrade to Sunder, so it does true damage and increases their damage taken by 30%. And you can go really crazy with this, of course, if you want to. But yeah, so before I ramble on for too long, hopefully this gives you some idea on, you know, what you should build for your FENRIR. Again, this is not like the must go to build, not even this specific build. I just want to talk about these items. But yeah, hopefully it gives you an idea. Hopefully it's helpful. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.